I have an absolute honor, and I think the tables are being turned on a certain man by the name of Tom Clark, who I have with me here today. I'm going to get Tom to give you his history, but Tom has interviewed every prime minister since Lester B. Pearson in Canada.
Yep.
Seen 6 theaters of war.
8.
Eight theaters of war.
Yeah.
Serbia, Yugoslavia,
Yep.
so many more.
Gulf 1, Gulf 2. Yep.
And I'm getting to interview you. This feels
Weird?
weird.
Yeah.
Weird.
It does. Let's turn it around. I'll interview you. I feel much more comfortable doing that.
No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. So,
All right.
so you know, that was very brief, but give me
Yeah.
a bit of your history and what you've seen in the world over the last 40 years, 50 years.
Well, as you say, I've sort of straddled Canada and the political scene in Canada, but I've also been posted to China, posted to Washington, posted to London, spent a lot of time in the Middle East, 8 war zones, as you said, and so a lot of, you could say that at a certain point I was of no fixed address. I was moving around so much. And it really was a remarkable time in history. If you think about the years, especially the breakout year, to use the expression, of 1989. I know that's going back into history for a lot of people, but 89 was an amazing year where the world changed. And really sort of because that was when we had the Tiananmen massacre. We had the fall of the Berlin Wall. We had the beginnings of the end of the Soviet Union. All these things now that are sort of lost to history, but at the time that it was happening, it was earth-shattering. And so what you realize in something like that is that change can happen. It doesn't take a long time for it to happen. It's, everybody thinks of change as sort of something like a fast-moving river, and that you get on it and you ride it down the river and the scenery changes, and bit by bit things change. But more often than not, change is something that happens more like a waterfall. It just suddenly happens. And we saw that in '89, and when you take a look at what's happening in the world of technology, I have a feeling that we're on the verge of another 1989.
That's interesting.
When the world changes.
And what about technology today, do you feel? What's the thing? What's the thing that you think?
Well, I too often we look for the complicated answer when the really simple answer is right in front of us. And if you take a look at the sharing economy, in its essence, the sharing economy is pretty simple. The idea of Uber is actually a pretty simple concept. It's not a big, complicated thing that needs lots of wires. It's somebody in a car going someplace and he takes somebody along. And that is now happening. I think that where we are right now in terms of the big technological change, e-commerce has finally come into its own. Take a look at killer companies in Canada like Shopify that just practically own the world in this area. And it is going to change everything. It's going to change our downtowns. It's going to change our malls. It's going to change how people interact with one another. That's why I say we're sort of on the verge of another 1989 moment. There's another really interesting year, though, and that's 2007. And 2007 was the most remarkable year in technology that the world has ever seen. And it's not really recognized. It was the first year that Facebook went public. It was the year that Twitter was invented. It was the year that quantum computing started in earnest in a very real way. And many, many other things happened in that year. The only reason we don't talk about 2007 is because what happened in 2008, which was the financial meltdown. So we concentrate our history on that, but 2007, so 1989, 2007, in different ways changed the world forever.
And bringing it back down to the teams, I mean, we talked a little bit before we came on. And by the way, 2007, I believe, was also the year that those watching us on YouTube, I think YouTube had gone live in 2005, but it would not been very popular.
2007 was the breakout year for YouTube.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And let's actually, great segue back into the Breakout Project. We have these 7 teams working here, and we talked about, you talked about the complexity of technology and looking for complex solutions, and you had an analogy for me that was a very good lesson, I think, for the teams here working on what they need to do.
Early on in the space program, NASA had spent an incredible amount of money trying to develop a pen that would write in the weightlessness of outer space, because there was no natural way that ink was going to fall through the pen onto the ball bearing at the end. And it was driving NASA crazy trying to figure out how we do this. And they, as I said, they spent millions of dollars trying to find a solution in technology. The Russians heard about this and laughed and said, we've already solved that problem. It's called a pencil. And so it writes in outer space. So again, the idea is that sometimes it's the simple solution that actually takes you the furthest. And when you take a look at what some of the teams here are doing, it's not complicated stuff. It's an idea. And it's, in their essence, a very simple idea. But they're using all these things that were invented in 2007 to make that idea happen.
In your life as a journalist, if I may take you back down that road,
Sure.
You've learned change and innovation and these things are one thing, but there's probably lots of other lessons that you learned through the work that you've done, the people you've met, that may actually be very inspiring to those or important to those here at the Breakout Project.
So I think if my war years taught me anything, it was that when you're, let me put it this way, when you're in a war zone, everything is in primary colors. There's no shades of gray. There's no on the one hand, on the other hand. Everything is sharp primary colors, which is attractive in some ways and terrifying in other ways, because you know that, well, obviously it's war, people get killed. But what you discover in that is character. You find out pretty quickly who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. And I'm not talking about who's fighting whom. I'm talking about the people with you on the front lines, people in the back, who's got it right. And so I always sort of looked at that and thought, maybe that's the one thing that we have forgotten or overlooked, and in our quest for money and more money, financial capital, seeking it and celebrating it. Who do we celebrate at these fancy dinners and give out awards to? It's people who have amassed a great amount of money. We think that's fantastic. I don't think it's that big a deal myself. A lot of people who have amassed a lot of money are interesting, but not because they've got money. It's because of what they brought to the table. So I always think that the takeaway of 45 years of traveling the world and spending a lot of time in war zones taught me that what we've got to do is we've got to celebrate character instead of capital. Character is what all these teams are doing. Character is the thing that drives innovation. Character drives technology. It's not money. And I remember I was down at the Google campus not too long ago, and I spent an afternoon with the chief financial officer of Google, a Canadian at the time, actually, Patrick Piché. And I was asking about his investment strategy. And I said, a lot of people are looking at what Google's doing and saying, you're buying some really weird stuff that just doesn't make any sense. And Patrick said, well, first of all, you got to understand, my acquisition budget every year is about $10 billion. So I get to play around a lot. I buy stuff, look at it. Is it part of the future? If it is, then I keep it. If it's not, I throw it back into the pond.
Sounds almost like going into a shop. Oh, look at that. A few $1 million. Those people, okay.
But what he said was, and this is part of the genius of Google and where character ultimately takes you. He said when he's looking at companies to buy, he asks just two questions. First question is, what's your mission statement? And if the mission statement is, I want to amass financial capital, in other words, if your mission statement is, I want to get money and get rich, Google's not interested in you. If your mission statement is, I want to change the world, now you've got Patrick's attention. The next question he asks is what you do, does it have the potential of reaching 1 billion people? Because you're not going to change the world unless you reach 1 billion people, or at least have the ability to do that. So in the world's most adventurous company, or one of the most adventurous companies in the world, they don't care about money. They got more than enough of it. They're interested in character and ideas. And that's what's going to power us through the next 20, 30 years.
And it is true, because everything that we do, it's about people. People build the technology. People build the Breakout Project.
Yeah.
You know, we're two people. And
well, yeah, and I think, I see here there's some classes who have joined us, which is great. Hi guys, how are you? And so let's just direct it exactly at this level here for a minute, because this is really important, because you guys, all of you, are going to change the world whether you like it or not. This place is yours. We're here for a little while longer, but this is eventually your place. And just don't let anybody tell you you can't, because you can. You always can. And don't worry about the dough. If you've got it right in your head, and if you've got it right in your character, the money will follow. That's not the problem. But don't put money first. Put the character and the idea first.
And that's actually one of the interesting things that we've discovered about the Breakout Project, and I think you might have heard me say, when we started, we didn't know whether it was going to be money or people. We didn't know which. We didn't know if any, actually, I suppose. But in the end, we found that people are actually valuing their time, their effort, far more than anything else.
And isn't that interesting that when people think of donating now, they're not donating money, but they're donating themselves, which is far more valuable than money, actually. Money is just a means to an end, but the end itself is the person. And take a look at the stats on these teams. It's amazing. People from all over the world donating their time for free, but that is a commodity that is so much more valuable. And that's one of the big lessons, I think, of the Breakout Project.
I think so. I'm floored. I mean, when I've ever created anything, I'm looking for money to find people, find character.
Yeah.
And $5 million is a long way towards getting a lot of character.
Oh, it sure is.
Right? And that's what that talent is worth.
Yeah. And you think about it, too. So somebody donates an hour of their time. Say they're a lawyer, and they donate an hour of their time. That means that project has 1 hour of legal time that, A, they would have had to have paid for otherwise. They're getting it now for free. But they've also got leverage, because whether it's a lawyer, whether it's an investor, whoever is donating hours of their time, you've now got an army of fundraisers in front of you. You can use them, leverage them to go out and find the money, the angel investment that you need to make the project grow. You've got people who will spread the word. You've got people who will grow your profile. I mean, this is each project now, when you take a look at the stats, has got a small army of people to do the work that money wouldn't have even begun to have been able to affect. In other words, even if you had raised $500,000 for a project, you go through that money in a hurry, hiring lawyers and fundraisers. So it's remarkable what's happened.
So you're going to very soon have most of these teams come up.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about
and that's going to to be very exciting, because we're looking forward to the interviews. You get to go back to being an interviewer, which is great. And I get back to listening, like I used to do when I first arrived in Canada in '92, and I can put you on television and watch you.
Well, that was the other important year, '92. That's the year you came to Canada.
Oh yeah, okay. I changed all of Canada, actually. Yes, very much. some of the themes they're exploring, things like youth, education, First Nations, indigenous rights around the world, and especially here in Canada, a cashless society and the changing demographics that it all brings to us. What do you think are some of the big problems in your personal view after having seen so much change over the years and so much stay the same? What are some of the things we need to work on?
One of the big worries that we've got, and it really affects all of you guys sitting up in the stand, is the way we work is already changing radically. The artificial intelligence, the move to robotics, even things like autonomous cars and trucks, is drastically going to change the employment picture in this country, all over the world. We don't need people to make stuff anymore. We got machines to do that. We don't need truck drivers anymore because trucks drive themselves. There is going to be a revolution in employment that we haven't even begun to think about. And I think we've got to get on that really fast, because we have to devise something in society that says, this is not going to be a dog-eat-dog world, because there are going to be more dogs not eating than dogs that are eating. And so we have to come up with some idea of how we protect ourselves at a time when technology has moved us way beyond our own thoughts, way beyond our own capability of managing it. There's a number of things that are out there in terms of thinking about it. A basic annual income for everybody might not be a bad idea. But this is the biggest change that's coming. So as exciting as it all is, there are some major revolutionary things that are about to happen, or are in the process of happening right now. Not all of them good.
And what about the good things happening? I mean, we do tend to look at some of the things that are negative. So what do you see as some of the good things that we're doing?
So the good thing that's happening is that more and more people in more and more places on the planet are getting to know more and more stuff. You know, there's an old expression that says you fear what you don't know. And so we're getting rid of a lot of fear, because people, even people around the world watching us right now, are getting more information than they had yesterday. And through all these projects, in fact, a lot of these projects are all aimed, especially educational projects, are aimed at increasing literacy around the world, and literacy of all types. Financial literacy, real literacy, reading, and so on. So this is the really positive stuff. When you chase away ignorance, then life just gets better. The more people know, the better things are.
That's true. When I first moved to Newfoundland, nobody knew anything about what the hell I was. But you know, I discovered it was all about ignorance, and when I started learning, it changed my life.
Yeah.
Amazingly, and I hopefully changed other people. So I'm sure you've seen that in going into war zones, into places.
Oh, sure. I mean, you know, the motivational factors in war, of course, is that you don't know the other side. You don't know who the other soldiers are, and all you're told is that they're animals. And so if you don't know who they are and have no appreciation of them, it's pretty easy to kill them. But once you get to know who they are, once you get to know that they have basically the same challenges that you do, it's amazing how fast peace negotiations break out in those cases.
Yes.
So.
The classic stories of ending of war. And okay, now let's go back to these teams. They've been working at this for 2 days, but they're going to be working at this for 365 days. This is not the end.
No.
So do you have any words of advice on keeping focus, on making sure you get to the finish line?
Yeah, have a mission statement that's clear. Have a mission statement that you put up on the wall and that you look at every day. And that's always your touchstone. That's what you always come back to. And if you believe in the mission statement when you write it, you're going to believe it a year from now, you're going to believe it 2 years from now. The mission doesn't change. The tactics change. The way you do stuff changes, but the mission remains the same.
I'm I'm so proud, so honored to have been able to interview you, because I do remember you. Well, I've seen you all over the years, but I remember you when I first came to Canada. It was, you know, Tiananmen Square had happened, the apartheid was ending, something I never thought I would see. Berlin Wall had gone down, and I got to watch you on television. You were, I think at the time, you were reporting from Yugoslavia, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that's right. I was in Yugoslavia.
And you'd be on CTV on the you know, the tube, not the beautiful flat screen, but the tube on my university
the
television.
things you see in museums now, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if someone had told me, you know, years later, you're going to be sitting in Kingston, we're going to be changing the world together, and you are going to be one of our hosts that I get to interview, I would have said there's no way that would ever happen. So I am very proud and honored to have been able to do this with you.
It's great fun. Well, it's great to be here at this project. This is exciting stuff.
Absolutely, and this is world-changing. It's changed me over this last 2 days, meeting the teams and doing stuff, and I imagine it's going to change you as well.
Absolutely, I hope it does.
Hi, I'm Amber Mack, and if you like this video, click to subscribe to the Breakout Project channel to watch more videos just like this one.